Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are feeling refreshed and ready for this afternoon's panel, which focuses on the enduring legacy of this step-by-step program. Launched 30 years ago, the step-by-step program was an ambitious initiative led by George Soros and the Open Society Foundation. This program aimed to foster democratic, inclusive, and high-quality early childhood education in regions where these values were often lacking. It empowered educators, engaged families, and created systems of care that ensured children could thrive in environments that respected their rights and individuality. To commemorate this significant anniversary, OSF supported the publication of a book titled Early Childhood Education in Social and Political Transition, the Legacy of the Open Society Foundation's Step-by-Step program. This book captures the program's history, impact, and the lessons learned over the decades. Today's panel will feature the co-authors of this book, Sarah Klaus, Peeters, and Tatjana Vonta, all of whom were instrumental in the program's creation and success from the very beginning. Their vision and leadership have left an indelible mark on the field of early childhood education. Moderating the discussion will be Liana Gent, ISA's Executive Director. Together, they will reflect on how we can continue to build on this remarkable legacy, sustain a movement for democratic early childhood education in the years to come. Please join me in welcoming our panel for this important conversation.
I think, yeah. So we come with you? Okay. 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 Okay.
Welcome, everyone. Such an honor, a pleasure to be here with the three authors. As Miro said, this book is very special to us. It's really a testament to the impact of 30 years of work. But more than a testament, more than capturing the legacy, we hope it also captures a lot of lessons learned. And we've been looking throughout different sessions. In the conference, I hope you all attended the sessions led by the three authors, how the learnings, the insights from the book are especially relevant today when in so many countries where we all live, democracies are under threat. And what can we learn from the experience of 30 years' work of making early childhood education political, as we have heard from our keynote speaker today? It's really an honor to have the authors with us, and what a great thing to have the conference as a way to launch the book, but more than launch it, have an opportunity for all of you to meet the authors and hear their passion and hear their inspiration and motivation for writing this book. It's my honor to moderate the panel, and we will have two parts of it. First, a discussion with the authors, and the second part is very special. The authors will show you how they created the book. They will give you an insight of how they interviewed. You will hear the book is a result of many interviews, and they will conduct some interviews with a few of the pioneers of the program. So we will have 4 colleagues from the network join us for that second part. And before we start, also let me just share that, as you know, in the program we have a second plenary panel right after. So if you have an urgent need, please leave, but come back because we will have the 2 plenaries back to back and a surprise for you at the end of the second plenary. So let's just start. As we mentioned, the book captures the start of the democratic movement, but also what was an inspiration to establish ISA. And my first question goes to Jan, because as we know, it was your idea. Why not a book? And please tell us, what was the inspiration behind that?
Yeah, it started very strange. I had a keynote, and afterwards, Bloomberry editing house asked me if I had an idea for a book, and I said, yes, I have an idea, but it's not ready. But I didn't have an idea at all. And then I was looking around, and I got the message that the Open Society Foundation would stop the funding to Open Society. And I must say that I worked for the last 15 years for UNICEF in Eastern Europe, and that everywhere where I went in Eastern Europe, when I met somebody who was really interesting, who had very good views, there was always a link with Step by Step or with the Open Society program for early childhood education. So and then I had an idea, and I said to myself, I'm going to contact Sarah. And then I phoned Sarah and I said, Sarah, it's such an amazing project in so many countries, and for so a long period, there is no other program from this size in the world that I know. In Western Europe, the projects are always 3, 4, 5 years, not more. And then Sarah was very enthusiastic about it, and then we contacted Tatjana, and so we started the adventure of the book. I must say, we thought that we would finish it in a year and a half. It took us 3 years and a half, but it was a very nice time.
Great. And now turning to Sarah, we will delve into the book a little bit later. But before we do that, I think it will be very useful, especially for those of you who are less familiar, to have just a brief overview of the step-by-step. Sarah.
Okay, great. This is really a challenge to sort of summarize 20 or 30 years in 5 minutes, but I'm going to try. And I'll start by saying that step-by-step almost happened in an accidental way, or because it was funded by the Open Society Foundations and George Soros, and it was funded with $100 million over a 20-plus year period, eventually reaching 30 countries. And the idea was really to transform early childhood education across a region as the region was opening up to democratic ideas in the 1990s. But it didn't start out like that, actually. Mr. Soros was always interested in higher education, and he was keen to start a university that would be based in the region and that would serve the region and focus on the region. And he went up to visit a Canadian expert who was running a think tank in Canada, Dr. Fraser Mustard, who also happened to be a scientist and a medical doctor who really understood the brain research in early childhood. And he came away from that meeting convinced that if he really wanted to hasten the advent of democratic open societies in Central Eastern Europe and Eurasia, he needed to invest in 2-year-olds, not 22-year-olds. And so the Open Society Foundations, a very trusted leader of his, Liz Laurent, was tasked with putting together a program to serve children -1 to +6. That was on all of our folders, was -1 to +6. And she linked up with Georgetown University and with trainers from the Head Start program to create a unique methodology that could be adapted across the region. And the reason, there was a lot of thought that was put into what to do in that area, -1 to +6. And I think if you go back in time, you'll remember that there was a lot of privatization of industries. There was a period of time, this is a huge preschool, kindergarten systems across Central Eastern Europe, incredibly well-trained staff, but many kindergartens were closing. And so at the time, the idea with Step by Step was to build on these amazing staff that were still there in the system and to provide renovation in the system and to really focus on the technical aspects of introducing democratic early childhood education. And the curriculum, I'll give you, I guess I'll go forward a little bit. This gives you, right? Okay, this is accurate. This gives you a picture, really, of the extent of the program. It spanned across the entire region, and we also worked in Haiti, South Africa for a time, Argentina, countries where Open Society had offices. So it's a huge program like this. And what I'd like to say is at the time, Open Society had an office in every single country, an independent national foundation, and those independent national foundations picked all of the people that you're going to meet today to run the program, and many, many more. They picked amazing people who were fantastic experts to run the program. And They also led the development and strategizing around the program in its early years. The program, when it was introduced, it was organized as a collaboration between Georgetown and using many of the Head Start trainers. That's the U.S. National, let's say, the best we come into in terms of a national support program for early childhood that's focused on children living in poverty. So it used trainers from that system and from Georgetown University, linking them with two or three staff in every single country, and they formed very close relationships and worked together over many years. So the program started in early childhood, as I said, birth to age 6, focusing on children 3 to 5, and later also in infant toddler centers. And it started in every country in just 10 preschools, maybe 20 classrooms. And it spread so quickly. It spread almost immediately. More classrooms in the same kindergartens wanted to join. More kindergartens in the same areas wanted to join. More countries wanted to join that weren't involved. There were 15 at the beginning, and each year more and more countries joined the program till we eventually hit 30 countries. And the program also, really, the parents of children in kindergarten started to ask the leaders of the program, you have to change. They would come and they would say, you have to change our primary schools because our children are so much different than they were before. You have to change primary schools as well. So you see on this slide a kind of overview of the range of, I would call them vertical initiatives that at different layers of the system that step by step got involved in. So it was preschool education, it was infant toddlers, primary school, there was a huge focus on the program on inclusion of Roma children, minorities, children with disabilities, teacher education systems. We worked at the higher ed level with about 2,000 professors and 500 universities. And also ISA, when it was established, picked up the creation of standards. Just to give you an idea, it's a curve like this that shows the number of teachers trained. When the step-by-step programs were at full force, each year, collectively, these 30 countries were training 30, 40,000 teachers each year in these various levels. So it was a really large program, reaching many, many children. So 220,000 teachers. It reached millions and millions of children. However, as the Open Society Foundation started to think about how to sustain the program and how to keep it going, we got a little bit nervous about leaving it with the Ministries of Education as the only guardians of the program. And so we decided it was really important, as it was for Open Society in almost all of its programs, to start a civil society sector in early childhood education. And so our work became really very schizophrenic from my perspective, because now we were working on quality early childhood education, and we were also working on starting NGOs in almost every country. So the trainings had to change to trainings on strategy development, raising funds, and all of these kinds of things. So Open Society funded the development of either a center at a university, in the case of a research institute in the case of Slovenia, or an independent association or foundation in every single country. And they immediately established ISA because they wanted to stay together and feel the community that existed around and across the program. Yes, so this slide kind of sums up what I've been really talking about, but what I do want to emphasize just in this sort of last minute or two is just to say really that the program from the beginning was really designed to embed in systems of education, right? So the agreements that were signed with ministries of education at the very beginning included that the program would start as an experimental program for 2 years. There would be evaluations, and then if the program was seen to be successful, then this methodology, this approach would be permitted in any kindergarten in the country as an alternative method. So we really, I want to encourage people to think about that kind of strategy, to build in sustainability from the beginning. The strategy of working with NGOs was mixed because As you know, in different countries, in some countries there's a real support for civil society organizations, and in others it's been much more difficult to keep the civil society sector together. But what I do really want to emphasize in this sort of brief thing is that there was an incredible spirit to the step-by-step program that I think still underpins ISA today. And there are about half, I think, of the countries that were in the initial group of 25 are represented here. And for us, I think this was, well, this wasn't a job for all of us. I think for all of us, it was really a huge emotional investment in our work that we put into it. And so I think, you know, we're all very nostalgic about it, and it was really wonderful to have the opportunity to do so many interviews to pull together perspectives from people about the book. So I'll leave it at that, and yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
There you go.
So we will go into what the book is about, but before we do that, let me turn to Tatjana. Like Sarah has been with the program from the very beginning, and as you could hear, has been pivotal, instrumental from the Open Society Foundations, and later when she headed ISA for a few years. And as she mentioned, this was not a job. This was really a passion, a motivation that brought not just organizations together, but also like-minded individuals. And one such individual is Tatjana, who represents, is now retired, but has been with the Slovenian step-by-step organization. Could you tell us, Tatjana, from where you are now, what do you think this book represents for the group of step-by-step organizations, for ISA more widely, for the field?
Okay, so I think that you can find in the book very useful information about what was going in the past and what was transforming during the crucial years, in fact, for many of our countries in Eastern Europe, Central Europe, South Europe, former Soviet Union. So something which about which we do not find a lot of information, in fact. So that's why I think that it is a very useful book, useful information, finally putting together. It is also a document about how the successful and sustainable program developed. So the methodology, how it was implemented in such a huge area, and give quite a lot of ideas how to realize the reform in our case. So I think that from this perspective, this book can be interesting for different audience. But regarding to the step-by-step NGO, I think that it is a kind of opportunity to reflect on what is now in the practice, what is still in the practice, what kind of democratic approaches are alive in the practice, and what is the situation in the country. And it also gives them opportunity to think about the, let's say, are they still in the same direction as we were, let's say, 30 years ago? Are we still supporting democratic approaches? Do we understand those approaches in depth, or just as something on the cover? Because, you know, generations are changed. We do have new teachers, we do have new trainers, we do have new staff in the NGO, so maybe they should really reflect on what was at the beginning, at the core of this initiative, and how much those kind of ideas are still actual in nowadays, let's say. So a kind of self-reflection would be very useful from my perspective.
Thank you so much, Tatjana. And before we go a little bit deeper into what you can find in the book, unless you have heard already, perhaps you have heard already that actually the book is free online. So you can download, we will have the QR code again on screen. You can of course also purchase it, but it's free to download, and you can access also resources related to it on the ISA website. So we just want to use this panel to give you a little bit of the taste of what you will find in this book, which we hope you will read with great interest. And to go a little bit deeper, I will ask Jan to tell us what readers will find in it.
Yeah. The book is about how can we use a process towards democracy and democratic pedagogy in a period of political transformation. It was, of course, a completely other political transformation than we live in, but I think that there are a lot of lessons to learn, because when we heard the keynote of this morning from Matthias, we see that we are also in a period of transformation, and I think there are quite interesting lessons in that history. And then part 2 is on inventing a democratic pedagogy, how it started up. And I can tell you it's not only very facts, but there are also a lot of very interesting stories in that second part. I was very touched by the stories of the pioneers of the step-by-step program. I hope you also will enjoy reading it. And then how do you extend a project? And I think for everybody, there are a lot of people here involved working for NGOs, for foundations. I think there are a lot of lessons to learn how you can extend a small project into a larger project. There are very interesting facts in that. And then the last is how can you transform early childhood education systems? And it's the theme of this conference, so it's also very linked to this. Can you say the next? Yeah. Next slide. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay. Okay. Now, in the beginning of the book, we had quite a problem. You have seen that there are 30 countries, and it's over a period of 30 years. So it was really impossible to, or it should be a little bit boring if we could give from each country a kind of what happened there, what happened there. So we decided to go to ask to do interviews with the actors of the program, and we've done that on different levels. And I was very surprised. We had Arainea, which was the president of Open Society, and we did an interview with him. And that at a certain moment he said, "Yeah, and I was in Haiti with Hillary," and I was doing the interview. I said, "You mean Clinton?" And he said, "Yes, Clinton." So that was the highest level of that we have interviewed, the man who is very close to the Democratic Party in the United States. But on the other hand, we had also the people who work with the Roma parents and with the Roma children. So we had on every level of the early childhood education system, we have done interviews. And in totally, it was more than 600 pages when we transcribed it. To be honest, I had sometimes the feeling that I have to do my PhD again, that it was such a lot of work. But it was very interesting because with the interviews, we not only had information about what happened, but also how it happened. And it was very, very interesting to build a history of such a large project on the basis of these quotes. And then we have also a chapter on what early childhood education was like in socialist times. I can also mention that we had a lot of discussions in Western Europe. We talk about the communist period, and in Eastern Europe they talk about the socialist period, so we had a lot of interesting discussions about that. And then there is also a chapter on creating equitable programs for Roma children and children with special needs. And then a chapter which was really, for me, very touching is the chapter on young children in times of war. And I must say that we had just finished the chapter on the war in former Yugoslavia, in Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kosovo. And when the chapter was ready, the war in Ukraine started. So, and then we rewrote that chapter. But I must tell, there are from the quotes very, very touching testimonies about what is a war doing to children, what is a war doing to families. And then very interesting, I think, for everybody who is was working in programs, in projects, is the chapter on strategies on how to transform systems. Very interesting is the role of universities. It was not the strongest part of the step-by-step program, but we can learn also a lot about things that didn't work so much. And then very interesting was, for me, was the role of civic society organizations, how they collaborated with the ministries of education, also very successful, and also the importance, and then there are some people from foundations here, how important it is that foundations and international organizations, that they invest not only in transformations for 1 year or 2 years, but that they do it on a long term. This is a long-term project, and you see that there are a lot of results from the projects that only appear after 3, 4, sometimes 10 years. So it's very interesting to, I think it's the only project that has a time of 30 years, that so we can learn a lot about it. And then something that interested me personally, because it's all my career I've been done research about that, and is, yeah, what makes that this project motivated so many people to change and to go in the direction of a child-centered approach. And also, I think for a lot of trainers who are here in the conference, I think it's a very interesting part of this book also. I learned a lot about it in this.
Great. And now, are we going to listen to a video?
Yeah.
She's a person that you have interviewed, and you have selected this particular piece because... Can you give us a little background?
Sure. So Iveta Silva, actually, we didn't interview her, but we actually had her participate in a podcast that we developed about the book. She's a comparative education expert who led the International Comparative Education... I'm going to get the name of the organization wrong. I can look at Matthias Urban, he can tell me, but he's now the president of the, anyhow, of the early childhood part. But so she is a leader in comparative education, and we had her participate in a podcast, but she also was an expert on the step-by-step program as well, and served on the education board of the Open Society Foundation. So she participated in a podcast, and we captured a clip from that podcast, which I guess we can play for you so that you can hear it. We wanted you to hear it to give you a different perspective, an outside perspective. Do I click?
Yeah, I think so.
Iveta, you mentioned earlier that step-by-step is a remarkable example of East-West policy borrowing. What did you personally learn from it?
One of the kind of most interesting lessons to me was how this program created really dense networks of academics and practitioners not only regionally, but also like on a worldwide scale, right? So now we can actually see collaborations that are happening across the post-socialist regions. You can see collaborations that are happening worldwide. It really actually ended up changing the culture of education and created these absolutely powerful networks that continue to advocate for policy changes, for even broader cultural changes in the context where they're working.
Great. So I'm going to go back a few slides. Tatjana, I would like to turn back to you. If you can tell us a little bit more about the book emphasizing the importance of leadership and investing in strengthening the leadership of education experts.
We have quite a lot in the network among people who implement the program. We had quite a lot of problems with the leadership issues on the level of school, on the level of agencies, on all levels. Anyway, but we were at the same time, especially at the beginning, somehow feel very safe because all the time we had the National Foundation behind us, we had behind us the Open Society Foundation. We all the time received a kind of support, technical or professional support. But suddenly, at the time when there was the huge expansion of the step-by-step program in all our countries, at the time when we started the process of independency of the step-by-step program from OSF, and at the time when in each country we have to find a new home, let's say, establish the new NGO or whatever we propose. At the time when in some countries national foundations were closing and were no more active in our countries, so it happens in few years after we started with the program and expanded. And at the time when new countries came into our network to start with the step-by-step program. So at that time, we find out that in fact our needs, the needs of the particular country, started to be very different, and that's why we were somehow almost lost in the space, let's say. It was a critical moment, and during the one conference in Dubrovnik, in fact, we decided we need a leading institution which will give us this feeling of being connected, being supported, to have this sense of belonging and security, and almost over the night, in fact, prepare all the documents to vote for international step-by-step, to vote to establish the International Step-by-Step Association as a leading organization which will connect us for future steps. So it was a historical moment, no matter to the fact that it almost started during the one night almost.
So this was 1998. And
as regard, I'm talking from the regarding of the national step-by-step programs. Yeah. And from this perspective, it was really very, very important moment. But of course, for many years we were connecting and almost a closed society, because only Eastern European countries were included. So next step came when we opened ourselves towards the Western, Northern, Southern countries, to come in, to connect ourselves, and not only to connect ourselves, but also to go on and of course create democratic approaches together. So it was a second very, very important moment in this history. And of course we are proud that ISA, in fact, like the baby of the Eastern countries, is leading this process.
And has now members from Eastern Europe, but also other parts of Europe, and has grown. And I think you emphasized this notion that it was led by the founding step-by-step organizations
yes.
historically, yes.
Yeah.
Sarah, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I want to make a little slight correction. So there was an initial interest in starting an organization, but actually it took a year, and there was an initiative group that worked for a year on what ISA would do, and then there was a lot of work on, we explored every country in Europe that had NGO, and their NGO regulations to decide where to establish ISA.
Yes,
and then there was, statutes developed by multiple lawyers, and then there was this important Dubrovnik meeting where everything was voted in. So it did take a while, but I know one of the motivations for me in working on the book is to see really the leadership from Eastern Europe in designing a network that works for all of Europe and Eurasia, because I think sometimes that's not appreciated, that leadership can come from Eastern Europe as well as from Western Europe or from other countries. And I really also admire so many of the thinkers, and like Vygotsky and others that come from Eastern Europe. And so I wanted to emphasize that as we were speaking.
Very important point,
Yeah.
yes. Thank you, all the three of you. So these are the three co-authors of the book, and we very much hope that you will download it and read it. And to inspire you further, I'll turn over to Sarah now, who will recreate some moments of the interviews, but please call to the stage the four colleagues that we will interview. And you can also read their names on our screen.
Yeah, so I'd love to invite Gerda Sula, who is the director. I'm going to let you read their titles, because I cannot read. Can you say Gerda Sula, because I can't read so carefully there. The director of the Step-by-Step Center in Albania and ISA board member, Cornelia Tintilier, who is the director of the Step-by-Step program in Moldova, Suzana Kierandiska, who is the director of the Foundation for Educational Cultural Initiative Step-by-Step North Macedonia, and Eva Deak, director of Partners Hungary. And we're going to recreate a little bit. So just to give you an idea, when we started working on the book, it was COVID. And so we started doing all of these interviews on Zoom. So you have to imagine like 4 little Zoom things like this, and we would divide and share how we organized the interviews. So I'm going to ask Jan if you can ask the first question of a few members of our panel. And I also want to emphasize, as we conducted the interviews, each one of us had some kind of pet issue that we really wanted to kind of find out more about, you know? I mean, we were all participating in putting together a book, but each of us had something that was niggling at us that we really wanted to find out about. So Jan is going to ask his question to 2 of our panelists.
Yeah, I've already said it, but I will repeat it again. As a Western European, I was very surprised by, if you see the figures of the first 10 years, 220,000 teachers that were involved in the project. So my question is, how did you manage in your own country, in your program, to motivate so many teachers to be involved in the step-by-step program? Cornelia, you can start, and then
Okay,
Gerda. Yeah.
I think my mic works. Yeah, I can hear myself. I think that was a very smart strategy, you know, to combine teacher training with setting model classrooms, because that was a way of showing in practice that it can work. Because otherwise people were saying, okay, some ideas are good, probably they work somewhere, but in our context, in our, you know, tradition and culture and whatnot, it's questionable. But these model classrooms, they showed that it does work, and the teachers who were working, not the ones who have been trained yet, but walking into these classrooms, they saw such vibrant communities, so much creativity unleashed, so much, you know, so many inquisitive minds of children, parents invited, you know, as professionals who were sharing, you know, their, speaking about their profession, inviting children to participate in those discussions. So it was really something very, these were living democracies, mini democracies in action. So many teachers who were coming, aside from the different kind of a setting of physical environment that was sending in through this setting itself a message, how you can diversify, you know, ways of organizing learning. Aside from all these, that was, you know, bringing parents in, making them partners, real partners, and we speak a lot now about parent education. I think that was also parent education in action. The way that the parent meetings were started to be organized, which used to be, you know, you invite parents and you tell them whose kid is behaving well and stuff like that. The transformation of those meetings into showing parents how children learn through play, how children learn to create, develop social, you know, skills and stuff like that. So all this was new and very appealing.
Oh, well, it was, the collapse was so overnight, and it was so sudden that everybody was lost and trying to find their new identity. It was so lost that I remember I was a student in my university, and my professor that was teaching economy, Marxist economy, the next month he had to teach free market economy, and he would go, just be quiet because then I'm going to lose my finger. So it was that sudden. And everything collapsed, but we had very good teachers that really wanted to serve their students. And what started to happen was that some models started to come who were speaking at the teachers. And I think the secret of this program was that the teachers were so well respected. They were so well nurtured, and they worked with, the program worked with the teachers, not at the teachers. And they developed the program together with what was positive about the culture, the pedagogical culture of the country, respecting the existing values, finding what was worth maintaining and continuing with the change. And also making sure that the teachers would be kept together and supported for a very long time. It's the most difficult thing is to change adults, and especially to change adults that are going to teach children about democracy when they have not experienced democracy themselves. They haven't seen it in action. So it was a very exploratory process from within, with the system, and I always say the name is so perfect. You know, we really work one child, one teacher, one classroom at a time, and that's what made the difference.
Step by step.
Okay,
Step by step.
step.
Oh, baby.
So Tatjana, you had a different issue that you really investigated as we were doing our interviews. Can you ask two of our panelists your question?
I think that all of my career I was interesting about what is going on on the classroom level, what is going on with the children, what is going on with teachers, what is going on with parents. So this was my focus. And for me, the issue was why we do have such a big difference in the quality of the educational process, in particular classroom. And if you compare those classrooms, so children do not have the equal opportunities for their development. So what is going in the classroom? This was my issue all the time. And of course, from this perspective, I also can find out that there are quite a lot of differences among what we implemented in step-by-step program and what is going on in those let's say regular classroom, regular schools. So that's why I was almost 100% for the idea that we have to put together a kind of instrument which will guide us. What does it mean to have a very quality?
Yes, maybe like a high-quality democratic classroom.
High quality classroom with child-centered approach, with democratic approach, and I'm really glad that we work on this very long time.
Yeah, so we need to ask our panelists.
It was terrible, but I'm interested, Susie and Eva, what do you think is still in your practice, in your case?
I'll start the answer. It's not a happy answer at all, because I cannot report to you that there are many democratic classrooms exist in Hungary these days. And although at the end of the 90s and at the beginning of the 2000 year, we had many ones. So my message is that it's very easy to ruin democracy. And it can happen within a very short time. And in my answer, I try to give you some reasons why there are very few democratic classrooms in Hungary. But there are, especially in private institutions, in so-called alternative schools, and there are a few hero teachers who still keep up and cannot do it in a different way because it's in their blood that they cannot manage to do it in a different way. And I'm sad that they are considered heroes today, but they are. And it has many, many reasons. I would like to go back what Matthias Urban has said, that there is an epistemic exclusion. And this is going on in Hungary in many, many, many ways. Education has been centralized, run by government agencies all around the country. The teachers are very oppressed. Autonomy is taken from the schools. Without autonomy, how can you set and run a democratic classroom? The teachers are underpaid. 1/3 of the necessary teachers are missing from the whole system. teachers are aging. Not young people young people don't want to become teachers. So there are so many systemic problems, and there is no political will to turn education towards democracy, because there is no democracy in Hungary these days. So that's a very sad experience, but I can report to you that there are still a few schools and a few kindergartens which cannot manage not to teach without the step-by-step program. And I think these classrooms, these teachers, are our alliances for a better future when they can come back, and the teachers are still in the system who has been trained during the years. So that gives a little hope for us to be able to work again with the step-by-step program. And let me tell you just a very short personal story that if you saw the logos of the organizations, my organization's logo was not there, because that time I started with another foundation. But I couldn't manage not to save step-by-step in Hungary, because in 2004, where there was lack of resources and democracy started to decline, and there were a lot of political signs and also measurements that we are not going towards democratization in education. The original step-by-step foundation, which was run by somebody else, managed somebody else, she decided to close it down. But we still had the teacher, we had the schools, we had the methodological centers. So we really had those people who are very much dedicated to it. So I turned back. I was running a foundation that time, and I told my board and I told my staff members that there is a fantastic program, there are fantastic schools, fantastic people, so it has to go on. So this is how Partners Hungary took the program, and we continued.
Okay, thank you.
I can say that 30 years ago, when we started, we really were the pioneers in bringing the democracy in preschool classrooms, bringing the parents into the classrooms, bringing the stimulative environment that was really a place where the children can learn and grow. And after 30 years, there are still classrooms, and still, as Eva said, there are some teachers that are pioneers and they are heroes, and that continue to use the step-by-step methodology. In the last 10 years, we don't work much in preschool, but we work in primary school, which is also early education, if we say children from 0 to 10. And in all those classrooms, we continue to promote the basic values of the step-by-step methodology, that children can make choices, but also to take responsibility for their choices. And I'm very happy that everything that we promote in the step-by-step philosophy and methodology somehow became part of the official system. So I remember when the changes in the preschool curriculum were made, and then activity centers were part of that curriculum, parent involvement, then also stimulative environment. And we still have that as something that is really important in the preschool and primary education in Macedonia. For example, now the student participation is something that we work still on, and now the student participation is part of the law of primary education. So we believe that those changes that we started, maybe we cannot see in every classroom in Macedonia, but at least this is something that we still believe in and that is still very relevant. And not just us, but other organizations who would like to work in preschool and primary education, they still build their programs on the same philosophy that was step-by-step built 30 years ago.
Okay. Wonderful. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so we're running a little bit short on time, and I want to close. We've heard a bit from Ava and Susie what the ecosystem is like in your country, and where you think you've been able to make a longer-term difference, and where there have been limitations on that in Ava's case. I'd like to ask Gerda and Cornelia if you could each give a very quick response to the question. Can you give one example of how you think your work with Step by Step has impacted the ecosystem, the early childhood ecosystem in your country?
It has impacted it to the core.
You can elaborate a little. Tell us how.
Okay, well, thank you. Everything that we have been talking about that was so alien at the beginning. We were talking about child-centeredness, learning through play, individualized learning, parent involvement. All these elements are now internalized in the legislative, in the regulatory mechanisms. Maybe the name Step by Step is not written anywhere in those regulatory mechanisms, but I don't care. It's there. It has been internalized, and it is being applied, sometimes better, sometimes less, to every institution in the country. All these discussions about thematic learning, integrated learning, centered-based learning, all these elements that were totally non-existent at the beginning. We had a very structured classroom with a very centered teacher, with a very important table, with a very important chair, and then the structure was reorganized following the step-by-step principles, and this is how the preschools functions, and that, I think, is the biggest legacy that a program can leave. Thank you.
So the values are in the system. And how about you, Cornelia?
Okay, speaking about policy documents, I think we managed to have an impact what we've been criticized at the beginning for. What does it mean, child-centered education and all other things? They are now in the policy documents. So at the declarative level, we are fine, but I think at the implementation level, because that needs a change in mentality, this is what is more problematic. Mm-hmm. And also with all those changes in the bigger context, and democracy being a threat, as in many countries, I think we rely a lot now on creating this allyship, I think. That's the term that Matthias used today in his speech, but that's something that keeps the fire alive, and we are very much cherishing it.
Thank you so much to everybody for your contributions to the panel, and I just really wanted to thank ISSA also for all of the work they've done in helping us to disseminate the book and get the word out about it. But in a kind of a bigger sense, I really would like to thank Liana and the team also at ISSA, really for care, and the board as well, for carrying forward these incredibly important values of democracy, social justice, inclusion, these really important values, and to carrying that through, and for being so inclusive and expanding the work across all of Europe and Eurasia. So thank you so much for your leadership and for all that you're doing to keep it going.
Thank you, Sarah.
You'll write the next book.
Thank you so much. Well, I hope that all of you in the audience who are less familiar can now see on what strong foundation the ISSA network is built, and actually how we are so indebted, but we are also so humbled and honored to be carrying forward these principles. And we are only stronger because we have expanded with like-minded organizations, not just from Western Europe, but many more from Eastern Europe. So for those of you who don't know, we now have 100 member organizations from 30, and are all committed to the same principles of equity and what's best for young children and for societies. So in closing, also from my side, a huge thank you to Sarah for being the leader of this movement for more than 30 years now, and it's a major legacy.
It's not, there's a lot of people involved.
Many people involved, and the insight of the Open Society Foundations. And before we close, I would like to ask those in the room who are affiliated with step-by-step organizations. You have here 5, but there are more in the room. Not everyone is here with us today, but please stand up if you are staff or have been a trainer or have been on the board of any step-by-step organization.
We stand up.
Issa.
Okay.
Stand up?
Let us stand up again.
We honor them. They are the founding members of, and let's honor their work and contribution.
Okay.
And again, a reminder that you can download the book. You have here the QR code. Do visit the ISA website. You will find the special page, the step-by-step section, and you can find their methodologies, journals, reports, evaluation videos, but also a podcast and a webinar that we recorded. So do visit and download.
Yeah, and just a note on the QR code. When you go to the QR code, go down to the bottom of the page, and you'll find a link that gets you to the open access part of the Bloomsbury website. Yeah.
Yes, we hope the panel has inspired you to read it.
Yeah.
So thank you very much to all panelists, and we are already moving into the next panel. I invite Henriette, but if you need to stand up and stretch, do so while the next speakers are coming up.